You're standing on the bank of your favorite spot, the one that produced giants all last July. You can close your eyes and still feel the fight. But it's March. A cold wind is biting at your neck, and the water is dead quiet. You've been casting for 2 hours without a single bite. Is it just the cold, or are you missing something huge? Today we're talking about the invisible reason your summer honey hole is a fishless desert in early spring. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will understand a critical concept that 90% of anglers completely ignore. It's a game changer. This isn't about your lure, and it isn't just about the weather. It's about a massive event happening under the surface that makes your favorite spots temporarily worthless. Before we dive in, let me ask you this. Do you believe there's one single magic lure for March? Let me know in the comments. I want to see what you guys think before we reveal what's really going on. Look, we all have those spots. We call them honey holes, gold mines, the old reliable. They're the places we go when we just need to feel a tug on the line. We build years of confidence in these spots, so when we show up in early spring and get nothing, it's confusing. The common wisdom kicks in. You hear the voices of old-timers in your head. The fish are still sluggish from the cold, or they're still way out in the deep, or the classic, you just have to slow down your retrieve. And while there's some truth to all of that, it's not the whole story. It's the reason we get stuck in a rut. We keep doing the same thing, fishing the same shoreline, the same underwater point, expecting the same summer result. But here's the hard truth. The lake you're fishing in March is a completely different world from the one you fished in July. And if you don't understand how it has changed, you're just fishing memories. Picture this all too familiar scene. The alarm goes off before the sun. You get to the lake, and there's a beautiful mist rising off the water. It feels fishy. You head straight for that main lake point that always holds fish in the summer. You make that first perfect cast, letting your jig sink down to the bottom. You work it back slowly, carefully, expecting that thump at any second. But it never comes. You make another cast, then another. An hour passes. You switch lures from a jig to a jerkbait, then to a crankbait. Still absolutely nothing. The confidence you started the day with begins to drain away, replaced by that nagging feeling of self-doubt. You start questioning everything from your line choice to the color of your lure. But the problem might have absolutely nothing to do with what's tied to the end of your line. The real issue is much bigger than that. Now, let's talk about the first thing every angler obsesses over in the spring: water temperature. It's the metric we live and die by. We hear it all the time. Wait till the water hits 50 degrees. Or, the base won't really move up until it hits 55. We stare at our fish finders, praying for that number to tick upwards. But focusing only on the surface temperature is like trying to read a book by only looking at its cover. It gives you a tiny piece of the story, but you miss the entire plot. What's far more important is what that changing temperature is actively doing to the entire body of water, from the surface all the way down to the silt on the bottom. The temperature itself isn't the switch. It's the trigger for a massive lake-wide event that dictates where every single fish will be. To understand what's happening in the spring, we first have to quickly look at the summer. Think of a deep lake in the middle of August. It is not one uniform body of water. It's a layered cake. On top, you have the epilimnion, which is a fancy word for the warm, sunlit, oxygen-rich layer of water where most of the life happens. This is where you see bait fish flickering, bass chasing, and all that fun stuff. Deeper down, you have the hypolimnion, the cold, dark, and often oxygen-poor bottom layer. And in between those two is a thin, critical zone where the water temperature drops dramatically. Scientists call it the thermocline. Anglers should call it the fish highway. It is a predictable comfort zone that concentrates both bait and predator. Even if you've never heard the word thermocline, You've absolutely fished it. You've seen it on your electronics as a faint line across the screen. You've noticed that you stop marking baitfish below a certain depth. All summer long, fish use this thermocline like a road map. They might suspend just above it. They might hunt along its edges. For many species, it's a perfect combination of comfortable temperature and access to food. We learn to target these specific depths because they are consistent and predictable. We find a school of fish on a ledge at 25 feet, and chances are they'll be hanging around that same depth all over the lake. We build our entire summer strategy around this stable layered system, but in March, that entire system gets thrown out the window. Now let's hit the rewind button and think about that same lake in the dead of winter, frozen over with a thick layer of ice. The entire system is now flipped upside down. It's a concept called inverse stratification. The coldest water, which is right around 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius, is at the very top, just underneath the ice. But the warmest water in the lake is actually at the very bottom. Water is unique because its densest, heaviest point is not at freezing, but at roughly 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit, or 4 degrees Celsius, so that 39-degree water sinks to the bottom, creating a stable, albeit cold, refuge where fish can survive the winter. The lake is quiet, it's stable, and it's stagnant. But the second that ice begins to melt, a countdown begins to the most violent and dramatic event of the year for that lake. This is the moment everything changes. As the ice disappears, the sun's rays can finally hit the surface of the water again. Day by day, that surface water begins to warm up. It goes from 32 degrees to 34 to 37. And then it hits the magic number, 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit. At this exact temperature, that surface water becomes the heaviest, densest water in the entire lake. It is now heavier than the 37-degree water below it, and it's heavier than the slightly warmer water at the very bottom. And what does heavy stuff do in a fluid environment? It sinks, and it sinks fast. This begins a chain reaction that will turn the entire lake upside down. This, my friends, is the beginning of the event that is wrecking your fishing: spring turnover. So as that dense, oxygen-rich surface water begins to sink, it has to displace the water that's already down below. It acts like a giant plunger, forcing the cold, stagnant, oxygen-poor water from the bottom of the lake to rise up toward the surface. Strong spring winds often accelerate this process, churning the water even more. For a period of a few days to a week or more, the entire lake is in a state of chaos. All those stable layers that defined the lake in summer and winter are completely erased. The water from the top mixes with the water from the bottom, and everything in between. The lake is essentially taking a giant, deep, and very messy breath after a long winter of holding it. And for the fish that live there, it's like their entire house has been put into a blender and completely rearranged. Here is the best way to visualize what spring turnover does to the water. Imagine you have a tall, clear glass of water. You let it sit for a day, so it's perfectly clear. Now you scoop up a handful of dirt, mud, and dead leaves and dump it in. It all settles on the bottom, leaving the top half of the glass mostly clear. That's your lake for most of the year. Now, take a giant spoon, stick it all the way to the bottom of the glass, and stir it as violently as you can. What happens? The water becomes a cloudy, murky mess from top to bottom. You can't see through it. That is exactly what turnover does. It dredges up all the decaying organic matter and low oxygen water from the bottom and distributes it throughout the entire water column. The lake's clarity plummets, and its water chemistry is temporarily thrown completely out of whack. So, let's connect this back to your empty fishing spot. Why is that beautiful summer point a fishless desert right now? Because during and immediately after turnover, the environment there is awful. That once perfect drop-off might now be filled with that cold, dirty, low-oxygen water that was just dredged up from the bottom. There are no comfortable layers for the fish to suspend in. The thermocline that acted like a dinner table, concentrating bait, is completely gone. The water temperature and oxygen levels are nearly identical from the surface to 30 feet deep. The fish have no reason to be there. In fact, they have every reason to leave. They are seeking comfort and stability, and your favorite spot, at this exact moment, offers neither. The fish feel this change instantly. It is a stressful, disorienting experience for them. Imagine if the air in your house suddenly became filled with dust and smelled like a swamp, and the temperature became uncomfortably cold in every single room. You wouldn't just sit on the couch and wait for it to pass. You would get up and move. You'd go looking for a room with a cracked window or fresh air. That's exactly what the fish are doing. They are actively abandoning these main lake areas that have been ruined by the turnover and are searching for pockets of cleaner, more stable, and more oxygenated water. They are on the move, but they are not moving randomly. They are on a mission to find comfort, and if you can figure out what they're looking for, you can find them. So, how can you, the angler, know for sure that turnover is happening or has just happened? It's not always obvious, but there are some definite clues you can look for. The first and most obvious sign is water clarity. If you were at the lake a week ago and could see your lure 4 feet down, but today you can barely see it 6 inches under the surface, that's a massive red flag. The water will often have a distinct brownish or greenish tint to it from suspended algae and sediment. You might also notice a strange, earthy, or sometimes even swampy smell in the air, which is caused by the gases released from the decaying matter that was stirred up from the bottom. You might also see little bits of dark debris suspended in the water column that you don't normally see. During this period, your electronics become one of your most valuable tools, not for finding fish, but for diagnosing the state of the lake. When a lake is stratified in the summer, your fish finder screen looks clean. You see a clear bottom, you see the thermocline, and you see distinct arches or schools of bait. But when you're in the middle of a turnover, your screen will often look like a complete mess. You will see clutter or static throughout the entire water column. This is all the suspended particulate matter that's been churned up. You won't be marking fish on their usual deep structure spots because, frankly, they aren't there. Your sonar is telling you a story. It's screaming that the deep water is currently not the place to be, for you or for the fish. And this is where the single biggest mistake is made by 99% of anglers in the spring. They pull up to their favorite summer point, they look at their fish finder and see no fish arches, and they assume the fish just aren't biting today. They tell themselves, it's still too cold, they're just inactive. So they anchor up or hold on the spot with their trolling motor, and they spend the next 3 hours casting into what is essentially a biological dead zone. They're fishing with pure hope and past memories, completely ignoring the blatant clues the lake and their electronics are giving them. They get frustrated, they get cold, and they go home thinking it was just a tough day of fishing, when in reality, they were simply fishing in the wrong place entirely. This leads us to the most important question of all. If the fish aren't on my favorite summer spots, where in the world did they go? They haven't been beamed up by aliens. They are still in the lake, and they are often concentrated and easier to catch than ever, if you know where to look. They have evacuated the unstable main lake areas and have relocated to find comfort and food. Their number one priority is finding water that is stable, clean, and has a decent oxygen content. They are looking for specific types of areas that recover from the turnover event much more quickly than the deep main lake basin, and these spots are probably places you drive right past on your way to your old honey hole. The first and most important place to start your search is in the shallows, specifically shallow bays, coves, and large flats, particularly those with a dark or muddy bottom. These areas are less affected by the deep water mixing. More importantly, the sun's energy can penetrate the shallow water and warm the dark bottom. This creates a pocket of slightly warmer, more stable water much faster than the main lake can recover. We're talking about areas from 2 to 8 feet deep. And if you can find a shallow bay on the northern side of the lake, that's even better, as it receives the most direct sunlight throughout the day, warming it up even faster. The fish will pour into these shallow zones to escape the chaos of the main lake. The next fish magnet is any source of fresh, inflowing water. This is a huge deal during the post-turnover period. A small creek, a stream, a river, or even a concrete drainage culvert pouring into the lake is like an oasis in the desert. This incoming water is typically cleaner, highly oxygenated, and often a degree or two warmer than the main lake. Fish have an incredible ability to sense this. They will stack up in and around these inflow areas in massive numbers. You might find an entire tournament's worth of fish concentrated in a tiny area the size of a pickup truck. Don't overlook any trickle of water entering the lake. It could be holding more fish than you can possibly imagine, all seeking relief and a fresh breath of water. Now here's one that might surprise you. In the early spring, wind is your friend. A lot of anglers hate the wind. They try to find calm coves to hide from it. But a steady, consistent wind can be your best ally after turnover. As the wind blows across the lake's surface, it starts to push that slightly cleaner, slightly more oxygenated surface water and stack it up against one shoreline. This wind-blown bank will have better water quality than the calm side of the lake. The wind also pushes the microscopic plankton, which attracts the baitfish, and of course, the predators follow right behind them. So instead of running from the wind, lean into it. Fish the windy points and banks. It may be less comfortable for you, but it's often much more comfortable for the fish. All of this means you have to make a conscious decision to abandon your summer mindset. It's time to put away your GPS full of waypoints from last July. Those deep ledges, offshore humps, and main lake points that were so good to you are, for the moment, lying to you. They are trapping you into fishing dead water. You have to force yourself to explore, to look at the lake with fresh eyes. Your goal is no longer to hit a specific spot, but to find a specific type of environment. You're not looking for a spot on a map. You are looking for shallow, warming water with some kind of cover, or an area with fresh inflow. It requires a complete mental shift from fishing specific locations to fishing current conditions. Once you're in these higher percentage areas, your lure choice should adapt to the conditions. Since the water is often still cold and likely stained or murky from the turnover, you want lures that appeal to more than just sight. This is the perfect time for baits with a lot of vibration and thump. A rattling, lipless crankbait like a rattle trap, burned through shallow flats, is a classic choice because it calls fish in from a distance. A vibrating jig, or a chatterbait, is another absolute killer. It combines the profile of a jig with the intense vibration of a blade. Spinnerbaits with big Colorado blades that put out a lot of thump are also fantastic. You want something that makes noise and displaces a lot of water, making it easy for fish to find in that dirty water. Ultimately, the biggest takeaway from all of this is to stop fishing your memories and start being an active observer. The lake is a living, breathing thing, and in the spring, it's going through its most dramatic change of the year. You have to pay attention to the clues it's giving you. Look at the watercolor as you move around the lake. Is that bay in the back of the creek arm significantly clearer than the main lake? Pay attention to your temperature gauge. Is there a 3-degree difference in that shallow north-facing pocket? Watch for life. Are there birds diving on baitfish near a creek mouth? The fish are constantly telling you where they are and where they want to be. You just have to learn to speak their language, a new language they only speak in March. So let's bring this all home. That prime summer spot isn't empty because the fish suddenly decided to go on a diet, or because they vanished from the lake. It's empty because the entire lake just went through a violent, chaotic blender cycle called spring turnover. The stable, layered home they knew is gone, replaced by a cold, murky, uncomfortable mess. The most crucial what at a Pavarotti moment for any angler is realizing the problem isn't your lure, It's your location. You could be throwing the most expensive, most perfect bait in the world, but if you're casting it into an underwater dead zone, you're simply practicing your casting. This knowledge should completely change your entire approach to early spring fishing. Instead of being a creature of habit, hitting your old reliable spots, you become a detective. You actively hunt for the clues: warmer water, cleaner water, and incoming current. You fish the lake that exists today, not the one that you so fondly remember from last summer. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that deep dive. If this concept blew your mind a little bit, do me a solid and hit that like button. It truly helps the channel grow. And please, make sure you're subscribed, because we have a lot more angling myths to bust. Now, I really want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a day just like this, where a spot that should have been on fire was completely dead for no apparent reason? After hearing this, do you think it might have been the turnover? Let's talk about it in the comments below.